Hey, what is up, you guys? This is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back here with another video. And, well, Into the Spider-Verse is coming out in December, and I cannot wait for Into the Spider-Verse. So, I am going back to doing a ranking video of the Spider-Man movies. Basically, basically, since Venom came out, and also just for the fact that Into the Spider-Verse is soon to follow. And I'm going to do a ranking video on, Spider-Man, since Into the Spider-Verse is coming out soon. Or shall I say, it will be out in December. I know I'm doing this in October, but, so sue me. But I felt like it was a good opportunity to do it. So, there are 6 movies on this thing. And all 6 of these Spider-Man flicks, I like these movies to a degree, and it takes a while for it to settle in to actually know what you're getting yourself into. So number 6 at the worst is Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3. Honestly, you all knew Spider-Man 3 is going to be the worst because honestly, this movie is so goddamn stupid. I mean, it ruins the Black Symbiote saga, and Topher Grace was not that good as Venom. And let's not forget, if you're trying to make us feel sorry for the Sandman, it's really hard to feel sorry for the guy when he killed Uncle Ben. It really was unnecessary to undo what Peter did in the first movie when he confronted Uncle Ben's killer. So the guy at the wrestling arena in this movie basically was the Sandman's partner in this movie. So, in the comic, the guy who killed Uncle Ben acted alone. In this movie, he basically was Sandman's partner. And practically that Sandman tried to mug Uncle Ben, and he was the one who shot Uncle Ben. This was a stupid way to go about things. And then you got Harry. Harry Osborn in this movie, he's supposed to be the villain in this movie, right? Well, Harry gets amnesia after a fight he has with Peter, which was really entertaining to a degree. And then he gets his memory back when Norman Osborn helps him remember. Yeah. Spider-Man 3 was just proof that 2007 was not a good year for Spider-Man. And it damn near shows in this movie. I mean, it had a disappointing as hell movie, and it had an equally disappointing video game, which I'm never gonna ever play or ever buy because I don't look interested in buying that piece of crap of a video game. I've watched gameplay footage of it, and I've watched how the cutscenes are. So, no, I'm not gonna buy Spider-Man 3 the video game. Next up at number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man 1. Now, I gotta say, I like Amazing Spider-Man 1. And it does its own job of being its own thing. It's its own adaptation. Basically, yes, it does retell the origin of how Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man, but having to throw more into this whole thing. Like, having to involve Peter's parents, and also the fact that Kurt Connors was an old lab assistant of Peter Parker's dad. Amazing Spider-Man 1 had some interesting fight scenes and had a really good cameo by Stan Lee, with Stan Lee as the school librarian. It's a really interesting movie and definitely has its quirks, though it does have its weak points too. Yeah, some moments I could not understand, like the whole chain swinging thing, or why all of a sudden Uncle Ben is killed by a guy who robs a convenience store. I get it, they didn't want to copy Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, but still, I thought the convenience store was kind of stupid. But I get it, they wanted to do something different. Next up, at number 4 from this top 6, since Amazing Spider-Man 1 was number 5, and above the Amazing Spider-Man 1 is Spider-Man 1 from 2002. Now, Spider-Man 1 does have its problems. Yes, it's a movie that came out in the early 2000s. Yes, it's a movie that practically has its problems because the effects look so dated compared to Amazing Spider-Man 1, because Amazing Spider-Man 1 came out in 2012. But Spider-Man 1 from 2002 was still an interesting movie and still has such quotable dialogue. The dialogue is so quotable from the first Spider-Man. And sure, the romance was a little cheesy, but yeah, I could forgive it because it was the first movie and it was 2002 this movie came out in. Next up, above Spider-Man 1, we got Spider-Man 2. Well, the last of the Sam Raimi trilogy at the number 3 spot. And this one was actually a really, really solid movie. A really, really solid movie, no doubt about it. Well, a really good movie. Doc Ock being portrayed by Alfred Molina. Alfred Molina was so perfect as Doc Ock. I mean, he's so enjoyable, and the fact that his American accent, he pulls off an American accent very well. I mean, after all, Alfred Molina's really good at playing villains for some reason. After all, he's British. Or more or less for the fact that Alfred just has a natural villainous to him. But Doc Ock is one of the more sympathetic villains of the Raimi trilogy, and definitely does the whole sympathy thing well. Sure, he does have his faults here and there, but he's still a very enjoyable villain. Oh, I also forgot to mention, yes, we also got Willem Dafoe who shows up at the end of the movie. I also forgot to talk about Willem Dafoe in the first Spider-Man movie. Yes, he was great as the Green Goblin. And yes, he was also responsible for that quotable dialogue in the first Spider-Man. But back onto Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock has his quotable lines too, and definitely has some great moments. Like that train fight. The train fight was awesome. And I still love watching Spider-Man 2. Though the one flaw of why it's not any higher is those stupid moments where Peter kept losing his powers. Was it just because of anxiety of why Peter kept losing his power? It was still stupid, though. And yes, it does have some great moments taken from the comics. Next up, at number 2, and a lot of people are not going to agree with me, is Amazing Spider-Man 2. Hear me out. Amazing Spider-Man 2, in my opinion, is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Yes, I have it as a guilty pleasure. Yes, I put my guilty pleasure above Spider-Man 2. And yeah, I know a lot of people are probably going to be pissed about it, but I don't care. I like Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't find myself hating it as much as everyone else does. I really can't find a way to hate it. For some reason, I'm just one of those people who was indifferent to it, or just more or less could not find myself hating Amazing Spider-Man 2. I did enjoy the fight scenes in it, and I did enjoy the web swinging in it. I did love the Spider-Man costume in the movie was awesome. I definitely love the costume in the movie. I definitely say I liked it more than Amazing Spider-Man 1's costume. Not to say Amazing Spider-Man 1's costume wasn't original, but I don't know, something about Amazing Spider-Man 2 screams Spider-Man with the costume, and definitely loved how they actually finally had a fight in Times Square. They managed to have a fight scene in Times Square, as well as the fact that we also had it at a power station, and yes, there was the whole Gwen Stacy death scene. But sadly, though, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not number 1. But we all know what number 1 really is. Spider-Man Homecoming. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's gem of a movie that came out last year. And, well, it definitely was the funniest Marvel movie I've ever seen, let alone Spider-Man. And yes, I'm not counting Civil War or Infinity War as quote-unquote Spider-Man movies. Even though Spider-Man was in it, it doesn't technically count because they were technically not solo outings for the wall crawler. But Homecoming, on the other hand, is a different story since it is a standalone movie with Spider-Man as the focus. In this movie, he's trying to prove that he's ready for the big leagues, that he's ready to take his game up a notch. And he's trying to prove it by taking on the Vulture, who's played by Michael Keaton. And, well, Michael Keaton so far is the best, well, Spider-Man villain we've ever had in a movie. Let alone the best quote-unquote most sympathetic. This is a sympathetic villain done right. I mean, Michael Keaton's Vulture, he practically is having to quote-unquote provide for his family. He wants to provide for his family, even though what he's doing is wrong. He knows what he's doing is wrong. Yet, this is his way of protecting his family, even if it is the wrong way. And yes, that makes him more engaging as the movie goes on, especially when we learn he's the girlfriend's dad. Yes, he's the love interest's father. Anyway, yes, we also had Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man show up in this movie. So, yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming is number 1. I basically say I would come back more to Spider-Man Homecoming. Even though it was recent, I still say it's not only my favorite Spider-Man movie, but I say it's my favorite Spider-Man, or I say it's my favorite MCU film as well. I say it's the best of the MCU and the best Spider-Man movie, so it's the best of both. So, yeah, in the long run, Spider-Man Homecoming is number 1. It's funny, it's action-packed, and, well, and it definitely has the best Spider-Man in Tom Holland. Well, the difference between Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. Tom Holland takes the jokiness from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and the awkwardness of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And you get Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who basically is both quirky, he's awkward, he's socially awkward like Peter Parker, and he's a jokish smartass. And he's a jokish smartass like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. So yeah, you get Tom Holland. In a long sense, I wanted to do this because of Into the Spider-Verse, and I am going to see Into the Spider-Verse in December. Well, in the long sense, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3, and I'll see you next time.